it's been a long-ass time since we did one of these interviews, but we'll call this the Ongaku Overdrive podcast. I'm Kent Ward, the guy that runs Ongaku Overdrive. You also saw me at Orlando Nerd Fest running around doing all kinds of crazy work there, and if you're local to the community, you see me at a lot of different anime events, but we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about my guest. He's an accomplished video game remixer. He is a game composer now. He's also a DJ. You've seen him perform at many events, whether it be MagFest or Orlando Nerd Fest, and both Ongaku Overdrives, and he's played at plenty of conventions and shows. It is none other than Benjamin Briggs. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. Are you sure I'd like to talk about you. No, we have to talk about me.
We can talk about me later, but let's get your stuff out of the way first. But
thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. No problem. I mean, I figured since you've been here in Florida for a while, that I get a quick interview with you before you head back to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yes, it's a long way.
Yeah, so
long way.
You've been on a nice extended vacation here while in Orlando. You just performed at Orlando Nerd Fest. How'd you feel about that?
Orlando Nerd Fest was fantastic. By far one of my favorite events of the year. I've played a lot of events recently, and Orlando Nerd Fest, it was just a blast. Like, the venue was great. I loved how close the hotel rooms were to everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was all very well contained. I thought that the staff, they were just perfect. Everyone was a dream, very accommodating. And of course, it's the family. It's when you're in Orlando, you're at a nerd event. It's always the same faces. It really does feel like family.
Yeah, we all know each other. We all party hard together.
Yeah, and the parties are on point down here in Orlando.
Oh yeah, one of the best things.
I've traveled all over the country and partied in a lot of places, and nobody gets down like Orlando, Florida. Nobody.
It's what we're the best at.
Yeah, you guys are the best at partying.
Absolutely. I think some survey listed our college, University of Central Florida, as like the top party college in the country. So yeah, we know how to get down here. But enough about that. You have been doing music for quite a while, since you're a young lad.
Yeah.
So I want to definitely talk about how you broke into things first, so people know a little bit more about Mr. Briggs.
Like music in general, or breaking into like the
Let's start with
scene?
Well, I know how you broke into music in general, how you got involved, but for our people who are not familiar, like how'd you get started with that?
Well, I got a Game Boy when I was younger. It was my first video game, and Kirby's Dream Land has a really, really good soundtrack, and there's one track on there in particular, King Dedede's theme. Everybody, it's a very common, it's a very commonly known song, but there's something about it. It just, I really liked the music, and I would sit there with my old Game Boy with the 4 AA batteries and just run the batteries down, put the speaker up to my ear, and just listen to the same song over and over again in the sound test. And so that was the first song of any kind, really, that sort of resonated with me on a personal level, like made me want to engage music on my own. And it was just a natural progression. Once I got a piano in 3rd grade, I just immediately started naturally trying to play like the Zelda theme by ear, or trying to play, that particular song from Kirby's Dream Land, things like that. And I took lessons for a very short time, and then I quit because I hated playing out of the book, and I just started playing by ear. So that was in 3rd grade, I believe. I think it's hard to say. I was real little, and I'm really glad that my parents bought me, just one of those crappy Casio keyboards that you can get at Walmart.
Right.
That's what I started on. And then, I ended up going into band and playing trumpet from 5th grade all the way through high school. I did marching bands. Had some really great teachers at Avon that taught me a lot about music theory, composition, tuning, all the really important stuff that allows me to write music instead of just guessing.
That's awesome.
And then I picked up guitar when I was about 15. My dad let me use his guitar, and I sort of just started teaching myself that, and I really loved playing rhythm and chords, and then I taught myself to sing, and then I started singing and guitar at the same time, and then I learned. I was in a ska band for a long time in high school, and I learned to play drum set through my friend Noel, who's an extremely talented individual, and I owe him, jamming with him during high school, I really owe him one, because I got a feel for rhythm just by being with someone who's a very rhythmic person. And I don't know, there's a lot of things that add up to me being a musician, but and it seems like the least of which is actually breaking into the internet and doing remixes. That was more just for me to like say that I could do it, to say that I was good enough for OC Remix, Overclocked Remix.
Yeah, so let's talk about that real quick, because I've been listening to Overclocked Remix for a long time, and for those of you who are not familiar, Overclocked Remix has been around for over a decade. They are a gigantic video game music remix website. All sorts of genres, all sorts of games of different eras. You can actually go to their website, ocremix.org, and check out all their stuff, including Ben's stuff. But I know you discovered that when you were young, and you were determined.
Oh yeah, I was
at the age of 15, right?
Well, I discovered OC Remix when I was more like 12 or 13, back in the days of Napster. You remember when Napster was new?
Yeah, I remember Napster. I used it, and that was around the same time I started listening to OC Remix.
It's sort of a weirdly specific way of telling this, but it is like, basically the first time I used Napster was at my great uncle's house in Texas, and he had he had a trackball computer, like with a trackball, like an ivory trackball, you know, that kind of like pinches your fingers, and it was almost like an arcade cabinet. He had the monitor, underlaid with some glass, and you actually look down. And so I just wanted to mention that because, that's not something you see every day. It's sort of a nerdy delight to find something that has a trackball, like the Centipede arcade machines. He had Napster, and I sat down, and Napster was a big hip thing. Everybody was talking about it. This was around the time that Pokemon Yellow had come out, and not that that's relevant. It's just that was the game that I was playing on that trip. So
like 90s.
Yeah, and I remember sitting down at Napster and thinking, okay, so this is what you do. You search for music. What do I search for? And like immediately, I thought of Super Mario 64. That was like the first thing I ever searched in Napster was Super Mario 64. Immediately found like the soundtrack stuff, and actually like being able to listen to the actual soundtrack and remixes that were from OC Remix and other places. So through Napster and Kazaa and those file sharing things, that's how I discovered that OC Remix was the thing, because they have those file names that say OC Remix on the end.
Yeah.
And I sort of didn't care about video game music for a couple of years, and then I rediscovered OC Remix. Like, I actually made the effort to go to the website more often, and I became a member of the forums. And this is probably when I was 14 or 15, and it just clicked. I learned how to use it. I got FL Studio, or it was Fruity Loops at the time, Fruity Loops 3, and I started messing with it because there was lots. OC Remix is a big community of people who are willing to help other people learn to make music.
Oh yeah.
So, and this was sort of in the golden age where it was really active on the forums, so it was easy to get feedback and just find tutorials or just talk to somebody on AOL Instant Messenger about, hey, how do I do this? How do you do this? And within like a year, I had finished a remix that was good enough to pass the panel, and that was satisfying as a 16-year-old.
What was the song that you made?
Fleeting Ecstasy. It's a remix from Super Mario 64, naturally.
Of course.
But even then, I was using the same sort of style. Like, it opens with chip tunes, and then it sort of has the build-up, like the electronic dance music build-up, and then everything drops out, and there's like a Flava Flav sample, and then it has the high-energy part. And it's interesting to listen to that and hear the differences, like the poor production quality compared to what I know how to do now, but the song structure and the style and the feel, like I had already solidified dance music as my main influence, and I didn't even realize that until, probably earlier this year. I went back and listened to my tracks, and I was like, whoa, I'm still making the same style. It's just back then it was a little bit more creative and a little less polished, because I was like an inspired 16-year-old, and everything matters. I come up with creative, overly artsy titles for everything and stuff like that.
No, when you're in high school, people make fun of you for being really into video game music. Because when I was in high school, classmates would ask me, "What kind of music do you like listening to, Kent?" And I'm like, "Well, I like listening to video game music, like Mega Man and stuff." They're like, you mean that stuff that's like bleep bloop bleep bloop and stuff like that? No, they would rag on me for that. But did you ever go through that?
Well, there is a stigma. You're right, and I would have gone through that if I had. I don't know. Video game music was never the main type of music that I listened to. I love video game music, and I had the Killer Instinct soundtrack on CD, and I would put it in and dance like a maniac whenever my parents weren't home. But when it came to the music I actually actively listened to, I was pretty standard stuff. I listened to Hanson back in the day, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, NSYNC, And then on the other end of things, I listen to a lot of Blink-182, Green Day, Smash Mouth, things like that, and so pretty mainstream stuff.
The Total Request Live era.
Yeah.
I remember all that.
Now that's what I call music era. Back when
There's
we had
that
Now
too, yeah,
One.
but like when I was a kid, like I mean, MTV had Total Request Live, and all those acts were on there pretty much every day.
Yeah.
Carson Daly era. But all right, so you talk about getting into OC Remix. Now, you focus on dance music, but I noticed like with a lot of your songs, I'm always reminded of Sega music, and I don't know if that's because I listen to your Sonic tracks a lot, but
Yeah.
I always feel like the Sega Genesis era of game music has a huge influence on like your style, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And I think, like you said, the reason that you have that opinion is because of I make a lot of songs with that Sega Genesis style slap bass. That you can hear it in my track "Fly to the Battery." You can hear it in Trash FM. You can hear it in my original tracks, Crypto Funk and Reanimated. I did a Big Giant Circles remix that uses that same bass sample. It's really twangy slap bass that's very, very iconic. Sounds exactly like a Sega Genesis. And it's actually sampled from a Genesis, but yeah, it honestly isn't so much an influence on my style as it is like I love the 90s era of video games, so yes, but it's not my strongest influence. It's actually, I use it a lot. I use Sega sounds a lot because I get a good response from my fans about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I made Trash FM, it very quickly became one of the most popular Sonic remixes in rotation anywhere. Like, not Team Sonic, I'm drawing a blank, but there's groups, there's fan groups of Sega fans and Sonic fans, and that track that I made is everywhere in those communities. It's just so insanely popular, and I realized that it's this combination of EDM with the punchy drums and the high energy, but that bass instrument and the sort of 80s feel. So Sega Genesis absolutely is an influence on my style, but Nintendo is very much chiptunes, like 8-bit chiptunes, and Nintendo is very much more an influence, and I've actually just sort of picked up Sega as an influence because so many people are passionate about those types of sounds. And I get so many specific compliments about those songs that incorporate those Genesis sounds that I feel like I have a duty to, respond to that demand. Because I love those sounds just as much as any other.
And that's one of the things I like about you a lot is that you do a great job of reaching out to your fans, interacting to them, making that emotional connection when you come out and perform. You're not just sitting at your computer or at a Game Boy. I see a lot of chiptune acts where it's just they're there, they're still.
Yeah.
They'll just jam out their Game Boy. It's
but they're not doing a lot of crowd work. You're like a human. You're like a super hype man. I even noticed that last night at the show. Even though you weren't performing, you were getting the crowd into it, just clapping your hands, hyping, dancing with people. Kind of like a cheerleader when you're on stage. Exactly.
Just getting people to just go with the flow and go nuts.
That's what I do, and I appreciate the compliment because that's what I focus on. And I not only do I try to bring that energy on stage and really make it about the spectators, make it about the people in the crowd. I also really focus on that on a social media front, on the internet. I very much encourage people to use my Facebook page as an open forum, to talk to me, to talk to my fans, to post things to my wall, send me a message, and that goes for all of my social media accounts. I feel like the only way I can cultivate the fan base that I want, the fan base that I would prefer, which is people who support me for who I am, not just what I do. People who support me and my message and my goals, not necessarily just my songs. Anybody can download a song and keep it on their iPod for the rest of their life, but a dedicated fan is hard to come by. And I find that it maybe isn't necessarily that hard if you take the right approach, which is, I don't know, it's just, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for the people who appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have stopped producing music because I started to get burnt out on it, and then I realized that there's this huge, just unfathomable, the size of my fan base, that if I try to think, how many individuals have heard at least one of my songs at one point. The number is staggering. And if there's a demand, if there's people out there that if I release a song, it's going to make them happy, it's going to maybe pump them up for their workout or give them something to listen to on the ride to work. And even if it's just a brand new song that I wasn't necessarily fully happy with, but I wanted to get it finished and out there, people are going to connect with that. And I owe it to them to continue creating music, because if there's a demand for my specific brand of art, then why wouldn't I follow that path? Why wouldn't I try to make people happier? Like, that's the idea, is make people smile, give them memories.
What are some recent games or tracks or whatever that people have been requesting a lot lately for you?
Requests? We had a request. There's always a request for Trash FM, which is a waste of time because I always play that song.
Well, I mean, not to play at shows, but rather like...
Oh, you mean like to remix?
Yeah, to remix.
Okay.
Like, lately I've been bothering you to do a dance mix for Earthbound.
Yeah, I get a lot of that. So good luck, is what I'm saying. But, yeah, I recently opened up a request line, not a request line, but a remix lottery, where if you pledge $1 or more to my Patreon campaign, even if you pledge less than $1, if you pledge to my Patreon campaign at all, patreon.com/BenBriggs, if you pledge, then you get one entry into the remix lottery, and you can either request a video game soundtrack or a video game song, and then each month I randomly draw a winner, and that becomes that month's remix.
That's really cool. So, like, Patreon is basically like a donation site. It's kind of like crowdfunding, but with a twist.
Yes, it is crowdfunding with a twist. It's like an ongoing Kickstarter that never ends, and it's dependent on you as the creator consistently making something that you're getting paid for. So, right now, mine's set to per song. So you can pledge a certain amount per song. You can set a monthly limit, and there's all these sets of different rewards for how much you pledge. But yeah, Patreon is, if you haven't checked it out yet, like, you absolutely have to. It's literally about becoming a patron of the arts. They are bringing, because back in the day, you know, before the internet, before television, before radio, like, there was only live performance.
Yep.
And if you wanted to hear music, you either had to play it yourself or go find somebody who's performing it.
Mm-hmm.
And people would pay on a regular basis to keep artists creating. They would become a patron of the arts, and that was a normal thing, and it stuck around. But with the internet and all of these different things that kind of complicated society and made information and images and music really easy to quote unquote steal and share, the game sort of changed. And Patreon, those guys, they had a really good idea, and I'm really glad that they went through with it, because it is finally a way for the independent artists to make money, to make an actual living off of the people who want them to make a living doing what they're doing. I get a monthly paycheck that's just, you know, $1 from this person, 50 cents from this person, $20 from this person, and it's simply just saying, we want you to continue doing this. We want you to make a living, and it works. Because when you really think about it, there's so many fans out there. When you're on the internet, there's pretty much unlimited possibilities for new fans, and a lot of those people are probably willing to spend money on you to help you create. But if it's just an album, they're just going to buy it once, and maybe not think to regularly donate, maybe not think about how that fits into like paying the bills and whatnot. So Patreon is a very good way to just finally do it, live the dream.
So this is going to be like your platform for like getting your funding for music for the time being.
I mean, it is. Patreon is quite literally paying my bills right now.
That's awesome. I'm really proud of you that you're pulling that off.
Well, thank you much. And it's so humbling and so, I mean, just pleasantly surprising that I have 78 to 80 fans that are willing to donate a total of hundreds of dollars for songs that I'm making for fun, and they want me to make music for fun, and that's worth money to them. And that's, like I said, humbling is the absolute best word for it. And I've already made 12 songs. I'm working on my 13th in the other room right now.
Yeah, I had to pull Ben away from producing, so if you're a fan of his, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. The ideas are still up there.
Good.
But So yeah, I managed to make 12 full-length tracks in the span of like 2.5 months, 3 months, and now I have this full LP of songs that I can release for free, name your price, on Bandcamp. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole. In their best practices video, Patreon recommends that you remind everyone that the music in it or the art is still going to end up being free. It's just if you want to support, then we're going to give you these perks. So the way I do it is people who pledge on Patreon get access to the songs as soon as they're finished, and then much, much later down the line, I release it as an album for free. But Patreon gives you like extremely early access.
Yeah, the Botchamania. I don't know if you're. Well, I know you're not a pro wrestling dude, but there's a guy who runs a thing called Botchamania who's doing something like that now too.
Nice.
It's the same idea, but changing gears a bit. All right, so you played at big shows like MagFest, you've done Nerdapalooza, Ongaku Overdrive, and Orlando Nerdfest. But I noticed you've been doing other kinds of shows. Like last year, you came to Orlando for NitroCon, but like the week before Orlando, actually the same weekend as Orlando Nerdfest, you were in Baltimore for Otakon. Yeah. So I noticed you've been playing anime conventions and stuff like that more. So what's that like compared to like the nerdy music fests?
Like compared to concerts? Because honestly, the nerdy festivals that I've been to feel just like anime cons. They're any sort of situation where there's like a connected hotel. It all blends together. Anime convention, music and gaming festival, Orlando Nerd Fest, Nerdapalooza. They're all the same kind of feeling. But if we're talking about anime cons versus like actual concerts, they're very different. And you know, I would definitely. I don't want to say I prefer conventions. It's just it's kind of hard not to say you prefer conventions when conventions are. The budgeting is different for a convention than compared to a concert. So the accommodations and it feels like that hotel lifestyle. It feels like traveling the road. You got your shit together. You got people who are paying you to be there. No stress, and it's just I don't know. There's something about a convention because no matter if it's anime or music or games or role playing or whatever, no matter what the convention is, if it's nerdy at all, everyone there is going to have something in common. At the very least, we have in common that we were once outcasts. And that's the coolest thing in the world to me, that I can go to a convention and have thousands and thousands of people that I've never met around me and just be able to intersect with any of those and learn their perspective and just meet new people that have common interests. And conventions are absolutely my favorite place to meet humans.
So how about part one of the interview with Ben Briggs now? Pretty cool motherfucker. You got to learn quite a bit about him, how he got into music and what he's been up to. He's been very successful and rightfully so. He is a master of making awesome jams and getting people to dance to him. If you like Ben Briggs music, check out his stuff at benbriggs.net. All the stuff there is name your price so you can get it for free. Or if you want to help out Ben, chip in a few bucks if you could with paying his bills. You can also go to patreon.com/Ben Briggs and support him that way. That way he can keep making awesome music for us all to enjoy. Next week, we're going to be talking about a variety of topics. Ben's time with Game Chops, of course, and all the cool motherfuckers there. Ben, has started watching anime, which is very interesting, so we get to talk about that a little bit. And last but not least, we get to talk about Ben's latest adventures in making video game soundtracks. It's very exciting stuff. You won't want to miss it. We have one more Ben Briggs track to check out. It is from the Mario Kart Bonus Beach album that he put out not too long ago. You never knew that you wanted to dance to Koopa Beach until Ben made it happen, so enjoy.